Many times, you can use Betteridge's law of headlines to deduce that when a question in a title is asked, the answer is no. In this case, I believe the answer to this video's title is complicated, but mostly yes. When comparing European amusement parks to their North American counterparts, there are some clear to find differences in the way they are designed and operated. Is it better? In order to answer this question, I'm going to focus on parks like Europa Park, Phantasialand, Energylandia, and Alton Towers. Obviously, not all of these do an insanely great job at encompassing the whole of the European amusement industry, but I feel as though there's a decent spread of types of parks here that each offer a decently varied experience. I will bring up our own experiences at amusement parks here in North America and try to compare them based on what I can infer from information available online. So what constitutes a better theme park? There are so many different ways to answer this question, and most of you probably have different opinions than me. In order to better organize my thoughts here, I'm going to break it down by focusing on things like theming, coaster collections, relative cost per visit, and overall interpreted experience. This last section is going to be much more subjective, but I think it should give a good final look at how each of these parks might compare to those in North America. Hands down, this is one of the areas that European amusement parks win almost every time. A park like Phantasialand is one of the best examples of this, in my opinion. This is a park that appears to have nearly every inch of itself themed to the brim. Honestly, in some ways, it seems to put even Disneyland to shame. The one area that Disneyland might win in the theming department is how advanced some of the technology is that you can find in some of the animatronics there. Where Phantasialand succeeds is in the density and immersion of the theming. We've started to see more comparable experiences here with the Wizarding World at Universal Studios and Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland. The entirety of Phantasialand is like this, with some areas purely developed for theming purposes alone. Alton Towers and Europa Park have a bit less theming, but are still great examples of this concept. Most of the time, when a new coaster is installed at a European amusement park, it's given a story and the park does their best to create hype before it opens. If we look at an example of a North American park unveiling a new coaster, let's take a look at Rapterra at King's Dominion. Immediately, we were given the name, theme, and layout of the coaster. From the concept animation, it clearly seems like there is going to be minimal theming for this ride. Sure, this one is a slight step above what you'd usually find at one of these parks, but not by much. Theming isn't everything, but I do find that when I visit a park that is well themed, it makes the experience overall better. Better theming can attract larger crowds too. Now look, I know my videos are catered towards coaster enthusiasts for the most part, and every time I say something that is against the coaster enthusiast MO, it makes you guys upset. Reality check. Being a coaster enthusiast is a hobby that is a niche of a niche of a niche. As of 2023, ACE had over 7,000 coaster enthusiasts registered worldwide. Now you're probably asking me, how is this even relevant? Well, to put that into more perspective, if all of those ACE members were located in the US and your park saw an annual attendance of 2 million guests, then that means that these ACE members would make up roughly 0.35% of the park's attendance that year. So if you're the owner of an amusement park, are you going to pay special attention to the needs of less than 0.5% of your park's patrons? Probably not. Does it sting a bit that this is the case? Definitely. By and large, the general public determines what they do and don't like, and they have the biggest influence on what the park chooses to install. Sorry, I'm not entirely sure where that came from. I guess it's just something that I've been needing to get off my chest for a while. So, do European theme parks do theming better? By and large, yes they do. We might have some of the largest scale theme parks in the US, but European parks are more consistent with their theming across the board. So let's count this as a win for them. Comparing the coaster collections of European amusement parks is one of the easier ways to spot the difference between them. A North American amusement park often focuses on large, record-breaking coasters, and most often features at least one wooden coaster. Many European parks are more modern, meaning that there are far fewer wooden coasters. Most of the time, these parks are located right next to neighborhoods, and as a result have fairly strict height restrictions so as to not cause too many noise issues. If we were to compare two very similar parks, Energylandia and Six Flags Magic Mountain, both of these parks have an extremely large coaster collection. The biggest difference is that more than half of the coasters at Energylandia are family or kiddie coasters. Magic Mountain certainly has its fair share of these, but there are a good amount more thrill coasters. Obviously, not every park is like this, so if we throw Cedar Point in the mix, we can again see a large amount of extremely huge roller coasters. Does that mean that the roller coasters at North American amusement parks are better? Not necessarily. You see, a lot of these parks take the time to create layouts that are unique and interesting in their own way. One example would be Nemesis Reborn at Alton Towers. This park has a unique restriction in that their coasters cannot be built at a height that exceeds that of the tree line. This means that many of the coasters are dug deeper into the ground and focus more on low-to-the-ground elements than others. Nemesis is highly regarded as one of the best B&M invert models out there, and it was this limitation that bred the creativity that it took to create this layout. On its own, there's nothing genuinely impressive about the layout. It has a max height of 42 feet, tallest drop of 104 feet, 4 inversions, top speed of 50 miles an hour, and 2,349 feet of track. This might seem a bit weird at first, but if we compare it to Batman the Ride at many of the Six Flags parks, these rides are 105 feet tall, have a top speed of 50 miles per hour, 5 inversions, and 2,700 feet of track. Similar in many ways, however, Nemesis Reborn constantly receives more praise. I believe a ton of that has to do with its interaction with the ground, theming, and overall pacing. Batman clones are often highly praised for their pacing, but imagine having that similar pacing, but all the while diving in and out of terrain, theming elements, and the works. This coaster probably makes you feel like you're going to lose your feet nearly the entire way through. A lot of theme parks in Europe see similar design principles, making the most of what you have and using those constraints to foster even more creativity. One coaster that could tip the favor in Europe's hand would be Voltron at Europa Park. This Mach Ride's Striker coaster features a ton of unique elements. It has a swing launch and a turntable, making the layout more varied and far more dynamic. Europe to me seems like a roller coaster designer's playground where they really get to stretch the limits of what they're capable of and create some truly amazing layouts. They may not always be the most forceful, but they hold their own in the variety of their layouts. I can't go without mentioning Velocicoaster though. This seems like the closest comparison to what is over in Europe, and this coaster is legendary. I think everyone who has had a chance to ride it more than likely agrees. So I guess things here are pretty much a toss-up. If you prefer the high-speed intensity, maybe even stronger forces, North American theme parks have you covered. If you prefer more varied, more heavily themed layouts, then European theme parks are the place to go. I think I'm going to give this point to both, as each region has their own strengths and weaknesses. Now, let's move on to cost per visit, or how much you should expect to pay visiting one of these parks. To do this, I'm going to compare two parks, Europa Park and SeaWorld Orlando. Aside from Disney and Universal, these were the most visited amusement parks from data sourced in 2023. Entry for Europa Park starts at roughly €52 or $55. Parking will run you about €10 or $10. If we were to look at the resort passes to visit all year, the Silver Pass starts at €295 or $309, and the Gold Pass starts at €475 or $498. When it comes to food, I've seen in some places you can get a food and drink deal for anywhere between €5 to €20 or $5 to $21. To compare this to SeaWorld Orlando, entry will run about $72 for a single day visit, and annual passes range from $180 for the Bronze Pass to $396 for the Platinum. Parking is around $35, and food is roughly $20 per person per meal. So a single day at Europa Park could run you about €102 or $107 if you eat 2 meals and only buy a single ticket. To compare this to SeaWorld Orlando, you're looking at roughly $147. This doesn't account for any tacked-on fees that might be added to the meals, which could be as much as 18%. If we were to factor this in, we'd be looking at a rough total of at least $154, and that's just for food. No drinks allowed for you. Suffice it to say, unless we were to bring a park like Knoebels into the mix for its amazing food prices, North American amusement parks seem to want to nickel and dime you wherever they can. Consider this another win for Europe. This final section is going to be 100% subjective, but based on what I've heard from the communities around European versus North American amusement park visitors, I get the sense that European parks tend to just feel like they're much better taken care of. There's the general cleanliness and the overall feel of the parks, which seems a lot more attractive to families, especially those with small children. Granted, if you were to look at parks like Dollywood, Silver Dollar City, and even Cedar Point, you'll find a much better experience. It also goes without saying that the new Six Flags leadership is most likely going to turn this image around, but it could honestly take a while. This is one of those sections where I'd like some involvement from you, the viewer. If you've been to both North American and European amusement parks, let me know which you think are better for the overall experiences. In this regard, I do think that I will have to give Europe the win, as even just looking at some park tours, it seems to me like some of these places just keep that magic spark alive that really makes visiting an amusement park special. A 4-1 victory is nothing to scoff at. Amusement parks here in the US often pale in comparison to their European counterparts, except on the coaster collection side. So what can the North American market learn from this? Well, I think that the biggest thing is the overall park experience. The former Cedar Fair companies seem to understand this a little better than Six Flags, but really didn't go to the same extent that other parks do. For instance, let's look at Dollywood and Silver Dollar City. These are some of the closest amusement parks to the style of European ones on the continent. The coasters at these parks aren't anywhere near the largest in their own categories, but each ride provides for a great experience that is heavy on theming. I can tell you from personal experience that these coasters stuck out to me more simply because of the fact that they had the theming that they did, and that there was a clear display of a good attention to detail. To me, the benefit of this is the fact that these places take you to an entirely different world. You aren't just visiting an amusement park full of other people, you are escaping reality. Disney and Universal do this on a much better scale, but when there's so few of them around the country, and with how expensive they are to visit, I don't feel like it's worth adding them into the comparison. I think the biggest takeaway is that for a Six Flags park to thrive in the current day and age, they need to focus much less on creating arbitrary records for their coasters to beat, and instead focus on making at least a bit more themed of an attraction in order to greatly improve the ride experiences. There are some ways that it seems that the new Six Flags is going to be doing this, but imagine a ride like Maverick at Cedar Point with Terran-level landscaping around it. Yes, there is a time and a place for your classic amusement park that doesn't have any theming beyond concrete and colonial-style buildings, but these parks have the budget for it, so why not take advantage of that fact? European amusement parks do, and it is their goal to fight tooth and nail to get you to visit their park. And how else do they do that? By promising a better overall experience, better theming and immersion, and a clean environment. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like and comment below and hit that bell icon. Special thanks to our Patreon supporter, Future Collective. $1 a month helps me bring even more content to you guys, and I even have some exclusive content coming, so check it out. Check the description below to find links to the rest of our pages. Thanks for watching the video, and ride on, Coaster Maniacs!